think. Thank you. Thinking about this, learning new things about it. I also spent a good 40 days in California, where I know some people and I got to interact with some people who are directly involved in the work that we are trying to do. One of the professors that I also know from Penn State also does some work, and I've got to learn from them. So I have a few things to share with you, and I hope that it will, bring you a different perspective, something to think about, and hopefully a healthy discussion or a dialogue amongst us. As I don't see myself as the know-it-all. I like to believe that, but I know I'm not. But it's better to be companions in co-creation of an enhanced understanding about this space, outer space, where none of us have been, but we are all extremely interested and we have vested interest in it. So also, I'm looking at my phone for the notes and not checking my Instagram or Facebook. So please don't think so. All right. What do I have?
You're a noted speaker.
Am I?
You're a noted speaker. You've got notes.
Oh, yes, I am a noted speaker. Yes. That's creative aerobics over there. Amazing. So I want you to sort of visualize this picture, and I think you all can visualize this picture much better than if I had done this in India, where I come from. We don't have snow, okay? You do. So have you heard of something called a snowball? Yeah? Have you ever partaken in something called a snowball fight? Oh yeah. So imagine a snowball fight you are having with your friends, and you want to make the finest snowballs with good integrity, structural integrity, that when you launch them, they don't fall apart midway. You want them to be loose enough that it doesn't really hurt the person, but then you also want them to travel the distance. The first aspect that I'm going to draw attention towards is a version of snowball fight, but with much severe consequences. So imagine a missile. Things are getting serious now. Imagine a missile taking off from 10, 11, 12,000 miles away. It goes straight up, and within a few minutes, it's in what we refer to as outer space. Now, in the outer space, there is no friction. So there is no forces acting on the missile. So it is able to keep a straight trajectory without friction. It just goes zoom, enters the atmosphere again. And then a little door opens. And from that little door, 4 or 5 nuclear-armed bombs come out. So this is like enhanced level snowball fight, where you throw one snowball, but from that one snowball, there is like 4 snowballs coming out. There is no way that you can determine if this was a test flight or if it is actually coming towards one of us, some of us. Trust me, we in Bowling Green, Ohio are safe. There are other cities who have marked themselves as better targets than us. So we are quite safe. The militarization of our space. We are getting more and more interested about this. Whether it is good, whether it is not good, is open to debate. But there is a looming fear, because the possibilities that something like this can happen, the possibilities, the potentialities that other countries have developed sophisticated systems to make this happen, capabilities there. They already are there. So what do we do? Do we also enhance our capabilities? Do we create defensive strategies? Now, the funny thing is, what are the defensive strategies over here? Think of a snowball fight. How are you going to stop a snowball fight? Do you have any ideas? Sorry?
Warm the planet so there's no snow.
Warm the planet so that there is no snow. That is amazingly creative. I love that. Get to the root of the problem. There is just no snow. Quite wonderful. Now it's a great morning. Earlier it was good morning. Now it's great morning. Any other wonderful ideas? Yes. Put up a barricade. Very good. And something like that was discussed, a nuclear umbrella, which is a very interesting notion where there would be some sort of a nuclear umbrella which would protect the entire United States from any kind of outer space enabled missile nuclear attack. So that's good. That's good. That's a very nice parallel. Yeah.
I hate to say this, but the only way to win a snowball fight is if the other guy has cancer, he goes home.
Maybe the other guy quit. Why do you hate saying that? Yeah, you take your opponent out. Unfortunately, in our case, we cannot. We cannot take out our opponents. They're going to be there no matter what. And not because we are not capable of that, but I think we have made some conscious decisions not to indulge in such inhuman activities. So let us put it as that way. Now, there are three phases in this entire missile arc. One, when it is being launched. Two, when it is in the outer space. And three, when it enters the Earth atmosphere again. The first and third phase. The first phase, it is very short time. In that time, we don't have the capability to determine whether it is a test flight, whether it is an internal thing, or it is an attack. So that's useless. The third one, by the time it enters, then it opens up and 1 becomes 4 or 5. So again, in that limited time, we cannot make the calculations that are required. Now, of course, we have much more sophisticated computing ability, which can do so much more. Like, I'm sure you all have heard that your device that you have can do much more computing than what Apollo 11 could do at a certain point. Anyhow, so it is only in this outer space that we can do something. So in terms of setting a defensive tactic, what was set up was that there was a laser enabled a satellite that was out there that would make the calculations, and anything coming towards it would fire a laser towards it. It cannot destroy that. That laser is not powerful enough to destroy it, but it will, cause damage, irreparable damage. So that's line of defense number 1. Line of defense number 2 is, it just throws some rubbish at it, some pieces of metal at it. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the concept of space debris and space dust. It is something that is picking up, and we will talk about it as well. But here, as a defensive tactic, it throws some rubbish at it, because at that high speeds, it can, again damage it. So all of this is there, but there are also treaties in place where we and other countries have come together and decided that we are not going to create any offensive strategies or any offensive devices in the outer space. Defensive capabilities, yes, it is possible, but as probably you all know much better than me, is that there is a very thin line of demarcation between something that is labeled as defensive and it being transformed into something of an offensive tactic in nature. So it's a very real threat. And think about this, that this is the roof of your house. Do you want a little bomb dangling on the roof of your house? Like you all have the ceiling in your house, and we are all used to seeing the ceiling fan. I've also met, how many of you have a ceiling fan? Yeah, quite a few. Do any of you have a phobia that that ceiling fan will fall? I have met people who have a phobia that that ceiling fan, while going, so they will, while walking, they like, they will go around it. They will not walk directly underneath it. If the ceiling fan can create this type of phobia, now imagine some other countries, things looking up. And that's why we have notions of sovereign airspace, infringement of airspace. No other countries, aircrafts and things like that that can fly in your space. Just how they cannot enter your borders. We have established these parameters. I mean, in our homes we have fences, right? So that the neighbor's dog or the neighbor's cat doesn't come over there. It's pretty useless as far as cats are concerned. They just come. So how do we determine where does our limit, what is our limit as far as the outer space is concerned? Where does the boundary, where is the border? So this is the second issue that I want to draw your attention towards. What are the limits of outer space? What is ours? What is not ours? And if it is not ours, who does that belong to? It's an interesting question. Now we have some answers and some understandings about it. But when this debate started, it was, having a high ground is always considered to be a competitive advantage in any kind of warfare or, having a high ground. So we wanted to have an air force. Maybe 100 years ago, probably we wouldn't be having such discussions because we didn't have the capacity to even fly from Toledo to Detroit. I have done that. It takes 19 minutes, and before you go up, you start coming down. It's a very unhappy experience because you don't get to be up there. You just go like this. I would rather go in a Cedar Point ride, the top thrill dragster. It lasts for 13 seconds and it goes at the speed of 200 miles. It's a phenomenal experience. I would say it's as close to being in the outer space as I could have done. Anyhow, so what is outer space? Where do our limits stop? Do our limits even stop? Because every time, if you think of us for the longest time when we look up into the heavens, and the man's or the woman's reach is all the way up to the heavens, right? There's nothing in between. There's no disruption. There is no signal disruption. We are directly connected, and we are going there. It's a thing, but anyhow. So 52 to 60 miles is where a line has been drawn in the space, in the skies above us. Beyond that is what most countries refer to as outer space. That region, that space is no one's. It's like international waters, it belongs to no one, and it is open to any kind of exploration and missions and things like that. And whichever country sends that mission is responsible for, all the operations and logistics and sending things there, bringing things back. But this line is arbitrary. There is no real consensus on this line. Some countries say it is 52, some countries say it is 60 miles. And think of it from a US point of view. Okay? We have some really sophisticated aircrafts that can fly really high. Of course, not at the 60 miles, but it is in our advantage if this line is lower, because we can easily cross above the line and be flying in what is referred to as the outer space and still be freely spying or doing the recon missions and things like that without any repercussions. If we are doing this below this line, then there might be consequences. So where to draw this line? How to come up with this? Imagine different countries sitting in a round table over here, the heads of states and the scientific experts behind them, and each and every one of them has a vested interest. How do you arrive at a consensus? You don't even know where actually outer space begins. So you see my problem over here. I'm going to be talking about outer space and outer policy, but there's no real consensus where it begins. Look up and it begins in some ways. So I firmly believe that for anything to work, if you are, say, for standing in a circle, for something to be really viable and sustainable, each and every individual in that group has to take one step or a few steps forward. Everyone has to take steps forward to come to a closer circle and a consensus. But if one or some parties, either due to fear or due to insecurity or due to pride or due to protecting a certain position and face, if they are unwilling to take that step forward, it's not going to work out. And we have that, and we have that in every aspect. The final frontier, space, it's tricky one because we know so much, yet we know very little. I highlighted one problem, which is this arbitrary line where outer space starts, okay, and where it how it makes a difference. So now with that, I want to move into another aspect of it, but let me just quickly take a look at my note over here, since I'm a noted speaker. Let's assume that we have decided from where outer space begins. But once we are there, what are we trying to accomplish? What do we want to do? Do we want to go all the way up there to look back towards Earth? Or do we want to go back go up all the way and look outwards? It's not a flip of a coin. We have seen that being up there, having an eye from there, it provides us with so much advantages. We have seen this. I'm sure I'm speaking to a generation that had to learn and had to know how to read maps. To go from, if you were at the Route 6, where do you get off? You needed to track it, and you would have a navigator sitting right next to you. And sometimes it was just a perfect synergy, and sometimes it was came off me. You didn't tell me that I want to turn left. Sometimes it's like, didn't matter. But now, I'm sure you've all heard of GPS, like Google Maps, Waze. Oh, it will also tell you where a fog is now. So if you are a fan of speeding, which I hope you are not, it will tell you where do these capabilities come from by looking inwards. Agriculture has benefited tremendously from these satellites looking downwards. In 1950s and 60s, I have an uncle, my mom's cousin, who was a senior geologist in the state of Gujarat in India, where I come from. And he was selected and sent out for a year and a half worth of training, which only involved looking at pictures and making sense of that. I'm sure when you look at your old school yearbooks, you have the same problem. Like, who was this person? This is not me. Why is my hair like this? Why am I dressed like this? And why? Where? But it was the training which was required to see, how the topography, the geography, and the movements of water bodies and everything, and how do you make sense of it to make sure that agriculture can be that. The same happened here as well with technology. People getting lost, think of people getting lost. And I'm not talking about here as well, but in water bodies. When I was in California in 2013, I met one of my distant cousins. And he was then talking to me about resettling humans on Mars. And how is it possible the atmosphere is not there? And he had told me, and I still remember it very, very clearly, that the one option which was the most feasible for resettling humans over there was to look at dried up volcanic shafts. So there are volcanoes in Mars, but some of them they have already exploded and whatnot, and they have dried. The shafts, the passages where lava would have come from, it provides almost a near perfect place for humans to resettle over there because it protects from the external atmosphere and environment, and you can recreate something about this. This was back in probably 12 or 13. I connected with him when I was in California in December and January, and now he has his own company, and that company, the journey of it is that he did his he actually studied rocket science from Purdue, then from MIT, and then in Stanford. While he was at Stanford, his professor threw a challenge to the students: is that this is a soda can. I don't care what you do. I want you to create a satellite which is the size of this soda can. I mean, when we think of satellites, we think of these huge things because we've seen those in Smithsonian's and whatnot, right? They are big. It's not very comfortable to sit in. They're still big. I think that's why the rockets have to be so big and whatnot. The students took on this challenge and then started looking at different trade-offs. What can we compromise? One of the things that became very evident, which needed to be compromised, that early on, when we sent satellites up there, we wanted them to last forever and ever and ever, right? So we made them tough and durable and different types of pressure and temperature resistance. That was the biggest hurdle. They said, okay, we are going to do away with the durability aspect of that. That's a trade-off. We are going to use certain devices or materials, which is not going to be durable, but it will resist it and be there for a while. But it will reduce the cost so much that we can send so many of them. They were able to succeed in that. And now they've sent so many small satellites, not exactly the size of soda can, but this much. So now you see that, oh, this one rocket went up and it transported like 100 different satellites doing, many different things. The downside of it is that they're going to be useless after 10 years. What are we going to do with those? They are still going to be circling in that great speed, and it contributes to space debris. I think from my understanding, there are close to 6,400 satellites, active satellites, that are orbiting around the lower orbit, that are orbiting around Earth. And this does not include the ones that have become useless, the ones that are dated and whatnot. So It's funny, but I remember growing up, when I grew up amongst my friends, when we would be playing cricket. And if we saw an airplane in the sky, we would like pinch ourselves because we saw an airplane. It was something considered to be lucky. It's like a shooting star, you know. You see a shooting star and then, God, give me this. Anyhow, now, no matter when you look, there is a plane flying above you. It is so common to see those things. On certain nights, if you look up, you can even see the International Space Station. And many satellites, you can see those things, which was not a thing because there are just so many of them. So now the company that we set up with those satellites, it provides, it has actually saved lives. How now? Indian Ocean is where a lot of fishing boats go out. And these are not sophisticated vessels. These are still made out of wood and they have some aspect of technology. They will have an engine. These are not sophisticated like the ones that you see here, or when you take, a trip to Europe and you see those, things. These are not like that. These fishermen often get lost and there is no way to find them. It is through these small satellites. Let's take the view and the vision of soda can out and bring in the view and the vision of a crock pot, I'm sure you can imagine that. It's that size and they are finding people and saving their lives. Many state parks, if you visited state parks or national parks, you don't get network. Right? People get lost over there. When I was in California, I was in a state park called Henrico State Park. It is the second largest state park in the United States, 87,000 acres, and extremely well known for a very rare phenomena, which is the tarantula migration. So I was at the office and I asked the ranger, what should I do? I have about 4 hours. And he said, well, I'm only going to be here for an hour. But if you get lost, we will send a ranger. I said, but does it have network? Yeah, not really. I said, then how is the ranger going to locate me? I was all by myself. And there was nobody else in that Henrico. So there are so many other applications. Think of logistics, right now, truck drivers are in the news, but when they drive trucks, there are all these, big logistics, big boxes that they carry. One company has hundreds of thousands of those boxes, and there are a few big companies like that. What if they could track those things through satellite? Because as soon as they walk out of or move out of the range of cell phone range, which is still very limited, even in this age and day, you don't know where your computer is. Medicines, malaria, COVID, many other medicines, when they are being transported, there are such huge black zones, dark zones, where you have no clue what is happening. You're just literally waiting for it to show up when it starts beating up again. And there are people whose lives are at stake. But do we want private companies to do that? I'm giving all this background so that we can come to, do we want private companies to be able to have that kind of power, or at that high ground where they can look? Can we trust the people and their interests? Do we have, we all love our privacy. And most of the times we have no idea how much it is being infringed upon. So without even realizing, it is already being infringed upon. So this notion of privacy that we hold very dear, and in Europe it is even stronger. Do we want to open private players to, and certain legal aspects of legal regimes does not apply to them because they are private companies or private citizens? And how do you create policies? How do you create legislations? How do you create law? The other big push right now in terms of this privatization is that there's so much money involved. Fortunately or unfortunately, NASA has struggled. After the great victory of sending first man to the moon, NASA has struggled. It has also been caught into very many bureaucratic issues. It needs funding. It doesn't have its own funding. It needs funding, and the funding is not being released. Also, I think it is more than 50 years since someone has been to the moon, right? The book, if you've read it, it says that the astronaut Cernan, he regrettably died at the age of 82, knowing that he was the last person that stepped on the moon. It's so unfortunate. It's been over 50 years. But now we are looking towards Mars, and it's not just us. China, Russia, India, Europe, we are all looking at that. We are by far number one in terms of the funding, the capacities, the abilities, and what we have achieved. But other players are catching up. Moon has become the next frontier. And the strategic reason, if you look at the website of Artemis, mission Artemis, which is the next mission to Mars, Moon has a very strategic vantage point. It is very difficult to go to Mars and come back. There is much more cost, but it's like if we had a gas station or a rest area in between, it makes life easy. And Moon and its orbit provides that. It cuts the distance by a tremendous, in terms of money, resources, abilities, and also to bring people back from Mars, it again serves as a rest area. So it has become very strategic, and also part of that. So therefore, now China also has, space things in the dark side of the moon, something that we don't consider much. There is one side of the moon that faces us, but then there is the other side that faces outside. If you want to go to Mars, where do you want to be? It's not to be able to see here and see, oh, for Thanksgiving, how we wait for our family to arrive and we see a car coming in. So here we go. But there is things beyond Mars as well. When I was referring to one of my colleagues at Penn State, he does work in exoplanets, and these are planets that exist in solar systems that is not our solar system, other solar systems. And he builds and creates these devices that actually are then installed into NASA probes, which are being sent there. So exoplanets, planets in other solar system. We had a member of BGSU faculty, Sherry Wells Jensen, and she's a linguistics professor. Also studies, I think it's called as xenolinguistics, language of the aliens. But since you all can understand me, you are also xenolinguistics. Just kidding, no. But she was part of this, first group of Astro Access, which is a private company, which is allowing and enabling for people with different types of disabilities to get there. And this was a test flight where they, I think, took about 6 or 7 dips with zero gravity over the Pacific. So if you get a chance, I mean, I'm sure if you Google, you'll find her email, and she's amazing. And right here in Bowling Green, reach out to her or talk to her about the experience. It was as close as you can get to outer space. So the private players, right now, what private players have been successful is as serving as a taxi driver, an Uber, they are taking the satellites that needs to go up. They are building capacities where they can send up a rocket and bring it back. It doesn't have to burn down upon re-entry, which is like reuse. A lot of people, that support recycle, reuse, and all of that. So this is recycling and reusing. It's like having an ink pen. You can fill the ink, instead of that ball pen, which is like a use and throw. So they have been excellent at doing this. The other aspect of the private players is that they need money. They either get money from the government or they get money from you and me. Okay, they list their companies on the stock market. There's a private equity as well, but they can also be publicly traded, and they ask money from you and me. Now, say for example, 3 days ago, you had $100 and you go to bed. The next day when you wake up, that $100 has become $74. Are you going to be happy about it? That's what actually happened. There's a company that had, taken all these orders to provide, to send satellites up there, and it failed. And the stock dropped 26% overnight. So you've lost that money. Are we willing to take such risks? Because this is an uncharted area, an unknown area. There's bound to be failures, and lots of them. There's bound to be massive successes. It is possible that those $100 the next day when you wake up could be $1,000. But do you have the will and the heart to take and make such gambles? I know in this community there was quite an uproar when they were building the casino, which is about an hour away from here. And there was a circle, and there were some people willing to walk a step towards it. There were some people who did not. And that's for everything. So our investment is the other thing. Now, the militarization, the commercialization, the privatization, many of us love to travel, and especially in this community, I have seen and met people who have traveled to great many countries. I think one person that I've met that traveled to 62 countries, living in Boeing. Do we want to travel to space? Do we want to go to the moon? That's what we've always grown up fantasizing, that one day I will be on the moon and look at this blue planet, and that visual, it will be so. I think the expression that is used is breathtaking. But there are people who are building those capacities. There are people who are wanting to go there as well. Its viability, its feasibility, its impact on the planet. One of the things that we need fuel, right? To send rockets up there, to push it to the speed limit that it requires. The escape velocity is what it's technically referred to. There's the liquid fuel phase, the solid fuel phase, and with different innovations, there. What is the impact of all of that? If you and me can travel to moon like we are traveling to Toledo and Harrisburg, it would be amazing. But then what is the impact? What are we going to leave behind? Right now, we are leaving so many space debris. At one point, I think I read that anything more than like maybe 4 centimeters or something, or maybe 4 inches, because of the velocity at which it travels, it can, just break through satellites. So cleaning the space debris is such a huge thing. And they are trying to work out many different ways, creative ways of how to take care of these space debris. If there are 6,400 active satellites, and so many more. I mean, just imagine the space it is. Earlier, they would have special missions. They would create a missile. They would send it up there to destroy the satellite they had sent up there. Why? Because they were all security and recon satellites. They were spying, and the technology is something that was very precious. So it should not, get into the hands of the enemy. It was like the race for Enigma machine, right? Which was, I don't know if you know about the Enigma machine or not. It was a site. I mean, doesn't matter. So you have to spend resources to send things up there, keep them up there, maintain up there, but then also spend resources to destroy them and then clean up the mess. So there's a lot, but we can learn. Our life can also benefit from it. It depends on whether we are looking outwards, whether we are looking inwards, and the whole thought of resettling on Mars is a great one, but then do we want to spend the same effort in making this planet better so that we can live a little longer? These are considerations, these are policy considerations. It can be a discussion over here, but these are the type of things that get debated at higher level too. The last thing that I had before I end this is I just want to give a little bit understanding of the players, the funding, and the move towards future. Artemis is a very aggressive program to send people to Mars, and it is also a very fascinating thing, but it is going to probably miss out on its deadline of 2024. There are many reasons of it. COVID has also created some impact in that. It was completely out of the blue. We did not anticipate it. It struck us down. One of the bigger impacts, forget outer space for a while, malaria. It has set us back so much in terms of our malaria targets. People dying due to malaria because all the financial resources were diverted to COVID that were otherwise designated for malaria and things like cancer. So there has been this thing which has stalled the progress a little bit. India, China, Russia. China, we entered the space race because there was this, Soviet threat. Now the Soviet threat has sort of dissipated, but the Chinese threat, is it actual threat? Is it perceived threat? I'm not going to go into it. It is open to interpretation and your understanding. But they were not there in the picture at all, but they have picked up so much. The type of government structure also, plays a huge role. We have the executive support for private players, for NASA, but then when it comes to, passing the funds, approving the funds, the Congress does not do that. So if you don't have funds, you're not going to be able to do that. That's not the case with China and Russia. If it is very easy for them to just say, make it happen, and people over there will have to make it happen. Because of the type of the structure or the system that they have adopted and they want to go. So in that ways, we have a competitive disadvantage. But it has served us well so far. It has kept us balanced. There has been harmony. The one thing that I have spent a good deal of time in thinking about, and I don't have an answer, I'll end over here and I will open it up to discussion, is that we have been the superpower. We have been number one when it comes to all these aspects of space. The companies, the SpaceX or Blue Origin, NASA, and we have a position of dominance. There are some problems with being in that position of dominance. we want to hopefully retain it. And what is the cost of retaining that position of dominance? Is it worth? And everything is a trade-off. There is no notion of no harm done. It's a trade-off. What are we willing to give? In this position of dominance, everybody is after us to get that and topple us from that position. And we are constantly and consistently working to retain that. So that's the broader question that I'll leave with that. Is it worthy of us, or is it worth our time, effort, money, resource, peace of mind to retain this position of dominance? Why do we want it? Is it for pride? Is it for human progress? Is it for our insecurity? Is it for our fear? What do you think it is? And that should ideally determine what the next moves should be in taking steps forward. So with that, I think I end what I had prepared to share, and we can have a little discussion, a Q&A, and take it from there. But you can take a couple of minutes to take it in. I put some questions and thoughts, and then we can open it up.
My name is Betty Lackas. I'm 88 years old. For 40 years, I helped to coordinate the program with the international students. The last time I saw this wonderful, wonderful man was 11 years ago. I'm so delighted that you came today. And of course, the topic of space I'm most interested in. And your final question of why do we want to do this is so complex. To me, it is one of the areas that perhaps we can become less competitive. We are only 6% of the total population of this planet. I consider myself a galaxy citizen, not even a planet citizen. And I know at age 88, I will be disarranged in different molecules and probably looking at things from a different perspective when we are off into wherever we are. And the question of what is the boundary line in space? What an absurd question. I mean, how on earth can you make a boundary line? Don't cross that red line. I just find that astounding. And the last couple of months when we had that private financing of going into space, they even had a discussion now. Was it 52 miles or was it 68? Were we really in space? And the value of space exploration. I know that you got your PhD in communication. And I wonder often why our news doesn't say we have 28 space explorations going on now. Of those 28, and I'm making up these figures, we have people from all these different nations. And guess what? They're getting along. They're not even thinking about who is going to invade who. So to me, I am so delighted you are here. And I just hope and pray that we can have more international thrust. I mean, he is a BGSU PhD fellow who is a world traveler. And I just thank you for coming, and I thank you for the program. This is one of my favorite programs each year. I think I've come about 12 years. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Just one comment is that I think as humanity, we've spent most of our time drawing boundaries. Since we started getting civilized, one of the first things that we started drawing boundaries. And now we have just, is that boundary an extension of our fear, of our insecurity, or of our pride? We don't know, but we have spent a good deal of at least the past 5,000 years or at least 3,000 years building boundary lines as an extension of, and maybe it has got to do with some peace of mind, but we have to protect that peace of mind, and it comes at a cost. So thank you, and so thankful for your comments.
Could you discuss the current situation with SETI?
With what?
SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I thought of myself when you said that. It's an ongoing thing. And of course, there is a large interest group in doing that because the potential, the opportunities are limitless. What can we learn? How can we progress? If we think of it in terms of that, like if they are much more advanced forms, sentient beings out there, and if they are willing to teach us a thing or two, then it is all worth it. But so far as I know and understand, we haven't found much evidence in our limited capacity to get out there. But that doesn't mean to say that it should be and can be completely negative. It is a likely possibility. So far, from what we have learned, all the way from Big Bang until now, there is a set of certain conditions that have made us, but that doesn't mean that there are other certain set of conditions that could have made something else. So it is going there, and one of the things with the privatization is that this will pick up speed because there are private players who are interested in it, and there is a group of people who are willing to support those endeavors, which earlier the only way was like, okay, I give my taxes and I let the government decide whether they want to do that or not. But now through these private players, there is a much more direct influence in fueling or sponsoring some of these things. What is that, Area 52 or 53 or 96, one of those places which is a very high secret. I want to go there. But it is a possibility. I can see certain trends because of the private players, and there's almost $20 billion worth of investment, and there's so much more that is going in. What it will lead to, it's beyond the horizon of my imagination at this point. But yeah, it is there. Thank you for the question.
You use the term private players.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if we're going into an era where governments no longer are dominating as governments and individuals in private sectors. NASA had to be rescued.
Mhm.
It was a pathetic mess. Could not send their own people up to the space station. I think we are in and we'll talk about, all satellites up there. There are thousands of junk satellites up there.
Mhm.
No one is regulating what's going to happen, what's allowed up there.
Mhm.
I think we're going to a whole new era where governments are distracted by other things and other concerns and other worries. This is frivolous. What do we have out of flights to the moon? We have Tang, which nobody drinks anymore. I just think that there's a whole new era we're going into That is going to be very interesting. It's going to be dominated by very strong individuals rather than governments. And maybe it's a good thing.
Maybe it definitely is. Thank you for the comment. And again, in response to that is, where are we in terms of putting our trust and faith? We have created a system of governance in which we put our faith for, helping that we remain safe and secure. But in individual, which is a private entity which exists for making profit, how much are we willing to put our trust and faith and feel secure in that? So it is going to be a constant back and forth in that. And it is good because private players have shown promise in making things happen that NASA could not make happen in the last 40, 30 years after the landing on the moon. So it is the private players that are definitely showing the promise at this given point. Thank you.
I think this is a wonderful topic. Going forward is positive, but I think we're forgetting about history. I think that looking back, way back to the caveman, we're not learning lessons from history. It seems like we need to stop and make ourselves, the whole world, better before we go into space. It shouldn't be this country, that country. It should be representatives of everyone. So I think if that was removed, we'd be a lot safer and a lot happier.
So there is a little caveat that once you are in outer space, that whatever that line is right now is between 52 and 60, at some point it can be 400 miles, but once you are in outer space, in some ways you cease to be a representative of a nation or a country, but you automatically become the representative of the human civilization. But then again, that line is arbitrary. Even for the mission Artemis, we have collaboration. There is going to be a Japanese astronaut that is going to be joining. There's going to be a Canadian astronaut that's going to be joining this thing. So there are those efforts, but you're right. We have to much more come together as companions in coexistence, and form a much stronger and cohesive what do I want to say? Cohesive representation of humanity rather than as this is NASA, this is ISRO, this is something else, this is SpaceX. But yeah, we must learn from that because it might propel us to much farther areas which individually it will take us longer time, but together we can go much farther. So thank you. Yeah. Yes.
We call ourselves the United States. Why can't we be a united world?
Is there another great discussions lecture series? Okay. 1, 2, yeah.
You mentioned that countries like India are also getting into the launching rockets. When you think about these countries, are they more interested in research, commerce, or what is the reason that they get into space? And I guess the other question I have, when you look at the total picture of everybody, is it more for commerce or more for research and exploration?
So on the face of it, thank you for the question. On the face of it, it is research and supporting and enhancing internal capacities of the nation. Many different sectors benefit from it. Temperature forecasting, agriculture, movements, logistics, telecommunication, the satellite TV, entertainment, which is a big thing now. It has been around since 1990s, all these capabilities. So on the face of it, it is that. The second aspect is exploration, not knowing enough and going there. But we are not going to find anything officially if there are other interests that are going on. India, I know it has started a push towards having startups and private payers. And they have also created certain mechanisms where they are providing funding to individuals who are willing to see things go up in space for different reasons. Now, once the technology is up there, the monitoring technology or the relaying technology, it is up there. How you use it, it depends on where the information goes. If it is going to the information is going to the Department of or the Ministry of Agriculture, that's how it's going to be used. But then the same thing, Pakistan is next nearby. If the agricultural information, we know what crop they are growing, and if there are malintentions in place, things can be done to destroy that crop as well. So we don't think of these things, but we can keep a track of movement of armed forces. Talking of India, India is sort of pinned between China and Pakistan. And the region, especially bordering both the sides, is surrounded by the Himalayan mountains. The terrain is very difficult, and even though sometimes satellites are there because of the weather conditions, they are not able to look down. Think of the situation that is emerging in another border location, which is very much in the news. 100,000 people have already congregated over there and are having their daily breakfast in the morning. So the initial interest is in research and exploration. But again, there are other advantages or benefits or tactical strategic motives that can also be served. And as I said earlier, that there's very thin line of demarcation of when what happens. It's the state of the level of emergency that a nation feels or a minister feels at a particular time, where something that is there for a completely amiable and innocent purpose can be transformed into something else. So, thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much for this very enlightening talk. I really enjoyed it. I have a comment to make, and it is not directly related to the topic of outer space. But if you take a very broader centralization of outer space, one way of looking at it is something that is outside your daily consciousness. But in your case, outer space was something physical, right? So I would like to extend it to the mental, okay, because these are all just different dimensions. So there is a conceptual world. There are many conceptual worlds, and we all live and transport ourselves between different conceptual worlds, depending on, So there is an area which is outside our daily conceptual world, and of which we don't talk much. We probably don't know anything until it happens to us, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that, and again, I want to tie this to your talk about collaboration towards the support of common humanity and progress. Those are very heavy words. I'm trying to lift them, want to relate to that kind of collaboration. Transport yourself to 2019 December Christmas Eve party. It was a different world. If somebody asked you about masks, probably you would think of Batman.
Yeah.
Okay. You saw some masks in history books. You see masks in surgery rooms, but mask is not part of your life. It's not, you don't like, I count, right? 20 times. Wallet, home, checkbook, keys, pen, watch, glasses, period. Okay, I need to have these different kinds of things. So that was the pre-COVID world. And then something hit us that none of us thought about, expected, but did it hit us in a very individual way, constricting everything, your movement, your distance from a fellow human being. Being close physically to people is an ontological necessity. It is how we communicate non-verbally our feelings of closeness or alienation. And different cultures have different unwritten rules and norms about physical distance. But we all know that intimate emotions are always, through body contact. Anyway, that apart, we were introduced to a new world, and it has been 2 years now. And so we are in a new world and opened up to a conceptual world which would have been outer space for us 2 years ago. We are very much in it now. It opens up another dimension about which our generation of people, who grew up in the 1950s as kids and, 70, 80 years old now, we didn't have to face germ warfare. We read, about all these killer diseases that would take people out in the 20s and 30s, you lose your siblings, your uncles, or so on, so died. What? Tuberculosis or plague, common. But in our own generation, it would be very hard for us to find, oh, I lost 2 siblings due to this or that. We have enjoyed that. We have enjoyed that for a good part of our lives. And then suddenly we are now face to face with an enemy or enemies at the end. But yet, what has been our collaboration towards the progress of this humanity? Oh, it's a Chinese virus. It's the Chinese. They are the ones who did it. The virus doesn't look at us as Chinese and Americans or Indians. It looks at us as human beings. Or not even human beings. Dogs get it too, and I guess other animals get it too. That is the boundary, the barrier that you're talking about. That is being crossed. This is a warning sign for all of us. It has started. It is not going to end. One thing is going to be followed. Look at the last 25 years, 40 years, and you'll see it for yourself. AIDS, 1980s, consumed us in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And got the Ebola, the bird flu. Okay. Now COVID. What next? We don't know. This is where we should be putting our resources. This is where we should all be, and nations working. We have a common enemy. No, we want to walk out of WHO. What kind of collaboration is that? Do we want to support such groups that want to balkanize us? We had one enemy in the 19 whatever. We call Soviet Union, Cold War, whatever. We have an enemy now. So again, I can go on and on and on. This again talks for human collaboration, and this is a new frontier. And I just thought I would share this with you. Thank you.
Thank you. No, this is much needed, and it is always going to drill down to where we put our resources and our thought. And there are many different areas and ways we can go about it. What is most urgent, what is most immediate, what is sustainable. So these are all different considerations. Thank you. Yeah.
Arvind, first of all, congratulations for a wonderful insight into outer space. I didn't know how I would even understand this topic, but you made it so accessible and so easy to follow and engage us in thinking through it. So, you know, I was thinking very hard about it as you're talking about it. I love the way you simplify concepts and make it very visual. So you posed a question about, is this for exploration? Is it for power? Is it for, I don't know what the third one, research, etc., right? I mean, where would it all go? I mean, I think it's absolutely necessary, this kind of exploration and learning and understanding of not just the world we are in, but what's possible in the larger world. There may not be a boundary at all. But I think the intentionality of those efforts should be about making this world a better place, like Srinivas was saying, right? It's about that. I think that's where it's at.
Absolutely, absolutely. She was next.
You were speaking of our interest in dominance, you know, do we put is that what we want, to be dominant or not? And I was wondering, do you think if we had more women that were in power, if that would be less of a thing? You know what I mean? And we would think more about what the gentleman was talking about, how let's all get along. Why can't we all get along? Does one country have to be dominant?
No, you are, and so. This is when I teach, I know this is something very, because when I teach creativity, one of the thought experiments that I do with my students is what are some of the things that are stressful? And one of the things that is very stressful is driving. Driving is very stressful. You have to make certain decisions, you know, and all of that. I always ask them and involve them in a thought experiment where I ask them, imagine if all the roads, all your interstates, all your state highways, everything were designed, conceptualized, and constructed by women instead of men. How would that be? Right now, it is all very angular and things like that. There is no smoothness in it. So, what you are saying, if women were leading the charge, how would it be different? I think it would be substantially different, and I would actually love to see, because there is something about women and harmonizing that gene. I don't know if it's in the genetic makeup or the structure, but there is some level of harmonizing and synergizing gene. And it would be fabulous. It would be fabulous, because right now, say half of the planet is unrepresented in the decision making. And that's not a good thing. I mean, actually, if you look at it, 99% of the planet is not involved in the decision making. It is only a few people that are making the decision. But broadly, so that would be phenomenal. And I think that intentionality has to be there, and we have to get focused towards that, getting that equity amongst us, within us. And for that, we have to let go of aspects of our insecurity, our pride, and the need to dominate over others. So it's a deep reformation within an individual, which extends to societies and communities, but it is a vital and critical one. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Someone should.
Question that started all these really nice comments about how we make choices. What's the greatest, well, first of all, I think it's time to answer the question. But the second part is all choices are involved with having constraints.
Mhm.
Cannot have everything.
Right.
And my own discipline focuses on economics, making those choices, and we have this big trade-off between the so-called wonders of private choice, marketplaces,
Right.
capitalism. And then we have the humanitarian side, which says, let's make it all collectively, let's all be friends and get this done. And there's this tremendous conflict between the two. Neither one is totally bad. Both of them offer us some very good options. But to try in the global sense of making a choice that we're all going to be happy with is not likely to happen. It certainly seems to be getting harder to make that happen today. So somehow we need to start talking to our neighbors and our maybe enemies to try to become friends. So we engage in actual dialogue rather than, excuse me, what I call pissing matches.
Yeah.
Where we're trying to see who can win. That's a dream. I would love to see that happen, but right now I'm not sure it can. So it's a wonderful question that should make us think a lot, but we're going to get very frustrated in trying to come up with a good answer.
So, three things I want to say. Dreams do come true sometimes. Rarely, but they do sometimes. I'm a student of economics myself, and I have a favorite law in economics, and that's the law of marginal utility. As you do something more and more, the reward that you get from it, becomes less and marginal, like less and less, it reduces. So I want to apply that to our efforts in space exploration and research. There will come a point where we will hit that threshold and it will start going down. It's part of the law. So the important decision that we have to make at this point is how close or how far are we from the threshold post which everything starts becoming lesser and lesser, the benefits that we get. I would on a personal level be more interested in charting ourselves out as to where we are in that the curve. So are we there where we are getting less and less marginal returns, or are we still so much? So I have my personal interest is in knowing where we are, so that we know whether to go further ahead or take it easy and
Let me just interject a little more on this. Psychologists have proved pretty strongly that the marginal utility concept is a very convincing one, a very nice one, but it depends upon our thinking rationally.
Right.
And the psychologists tell us that is not happening, so we can dream that we're rational people, but we're not.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm just going back to the book.
Sure.
And I read a statement in here that there's evidence that the United States has a
Secret weapon.
Yes. They don't discuss what the weapon is.
That's why I did not discuss it either. It's a secret. Go on, please.
But I thought since you're a little bit more involved in all of that you've heard some of the things about it and how you would, what do you think about it in August 21, which is past, which is coming up?
Yeah, so there are three different ways to look at this, or that, and they put this out that they have this potential secret weapon, which is up there. And I'm going to just present the three lines of thought that exist. One, that it is an actual reality, that it exists out there. We don't know it yet, about it yet, and maybe come the right time they will reveal it to us. The second thing is there's nothing like that, but they are trying to use it to have that upper hand when it comes to certain forms of negotiation. An impending threat that we have it, we use it, nobody knows it, we do it. So that's the other thing. The third is that everyone knows they are just bluffing it, and there is nothing like that. And it is just a tactic to retain this so-called dominance by creating a mystique, and like sensationalizing it. Which one it is, I don't know. If you ask me, I hope that there is no such secret weapons and things like that. Just because it's a unnecessary draw on our mental resources. Our mental resources hopefully need to be diverted to many other things, keeping this smile on my face. So if for the last 2 years, when people ask me, what is your goal? What do you want to achieve? I've been repeatedly saying that the 2 things that I want to achieve is that more people smiling for a longer time. People have in some ways forgotten to smile. And the second thing is that as soon as you fall on your bed, by the time it's the 5th minute, you are sound asleep. I want people to sleep. Because people are not able to sleep for whatever different reasons. So when they're just lying there, that Jennifer Lopez song, twisting and turning, emotions were strong. That's what I want. But yeah, that secret weapon thing is very tricky, and I was also surprised that they put it over here in the book, and like it's like a loose end, a goose chase of Alice in Wonderland. I don't know which one, but because I hoped and I did not want to enter the Wonderland or Narnia. So, but yeah, thank you for bringing it up. And I mean, it is open to imagination and interpretation what that secret weapon might be. But what can it be? A laser beam, a space station with multiple nuclear probes, something that can release a lot of rubbish and rubble, or some, if I be a bit more creative, not creative, actually, it's possible, harnessing the energy, the solar energy to redirect it and hit certain specific targets. One of the things that you may want to know is that you may have heard of those unmanned drones and vehicles and like that. Well, that's an old thing. There are kids sitting over here with virtual reality now, because earlier they were dealing in texts. With the satellite location coordinates, they were just dealing in text, like the computers of the 80s or probably the 90s. That's how they were dealing. Now they wear virtual goggles and they have these joysticks and they're looking around in outer space through cameras. And that particular satellite is over there, that is there, and they are actually navigating. So the US Space Force hires people as a very specialized force, and they play with joysticks and virtual reality and are actually managing things up there. So one of the also, we've seen that you can just go and drive that satellite into something else and use that itself as a weapon. But I won't go and plan further thoughts in your heads. It's not fun. So, but thank you for bringing it up. I appreciate it.
I think the comment about women is great. I didn't know for years until the book come out for the hidden figures that for women figured out the man. Never came out. But I guess I'd like to take an even simpler step. I know it's a very big one. I don't like filling out forms because I sat there and looked at all these questions. Who am I? I don't like the categories they ask me. I like the first category to be human. What difference does it make if a man or woman can do something? If I'm going into a hospital to have a serious operation, I don't care. I want the best person in that field to be taking care of me. So why is it so important when you're facing a job? Any of those questions on a form to fill out.
Right.
That's simple, I know, but it seems like it'd be nice if we just be human.
In earlier times, I think waiting for the mailman to arrive, the people would wait for the mailman to arrive and throw the newspaper. That was a painful thing. And in this age, and they're filling out forms, has surpassed it as a painful thing, you know, every case you do that. There are aspects of information that are critical in terms of care, because say, for example, a female physiology is different from a male physiology. And also from a research methodology point of view, there are aspects which need to be clarified. But I get your point that, you know, just get on with it. So again, it's a trade-off. The more information. So when I went to get my COVID vaccine, they asked me a question, and that just baffled. They asked me that, who is your PCP? I had no clue. I said, what is that? I don't have it. I don't have it in my body. I got scared. Like I heard it's something that you need to get, and like for the COVID vaccine to be, I don't have it. Is it okay? Like I was scared because I wanted that vaccine. They said, oh, no. And they hunt you. Like, you know, they say honey. I like, oh, no, honey. Don't worry about it. It's fine to not have PCP. I said, are you sure? I mean, I hope I'm not losing out on something. No. Later on, I found out this primary care physician. I travel to India very, very often. So all my medical needs have been taken care of in India. So I don't have a PCP. But I was strongly advised to have one. So now I have one. And the amount of information, I felt violated giving and providing that information to a PCP. Like imagine going for the first time to a PCP, you cannot even imagine, you may have done that so long ago and so many times. But like the kind of things that they ask, even I don't know about myself. And I kept looking at those, you know, faces that they have for pain, like the level of pain. And I was moving towards the right side with every question. So, why, I don't know, but yeah, that, you know, I'm seeing myself, that face from a smile, that pain, but I have a PCP now, you know, and I'm proud. PCP holder. Well, unfortunately, we never got a chance to go to the people who had questions.
I did ask, you know, for any of them to
Okay.
unmute themselves, and no one
Okay.
has. Is there anyone on Zoom that had a last minute question? And no one has put anything in the chat feature.
Okay,
so I
that's
think
fine, but I want to
okay.
thank all of the individuals who were listening to us via Zoom, and I also want to thank each and every one of you for taking time and giving your undivided attention to me and what I had to say. I deeply appreciate it, and this was outer space for me because from India I landed to Bowling Green, and you all welcomed this alien with warm smiles and warm hugs and whatnot, and I will forever be appreciative of that. So thank you so very much, all of you, and I appreciate. May you all have a fantastic weekend. Thank you. Bye.
Please feel free to drop off your dirty dishes at the busing station at the back on your way out. Also, if you did not sign in at the front desk at the computer, if you have a My Senior Center card, please don't forget to do that. Or stop up and see me and I can check you off up here as well. Thank you all for coming.
And I think my sister had asked, I told you
Okay.
that we were at
Yes.
our cards weren't working.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then would you like new cards when you come next time?
Yeah, my husband, I found one.
Okay,
So I
perfect.
did sign in today.
Okay.
He would.
Okay, so Michael, and then one for Pat as well.
No, I think she has.
She has one. Okay, perfect.
Okay,
Thank you. Hello.
I don't know, I
Well, initially I signed up or called 80.
Okay.
And registered, but I don't think I ever got any confirmation.
Okay.
And then last week, it was in the paper, but they're trying, because we were snowed in.
Right.
I got the paper like on Saturday. And said, by the way,
Yeah.
so was last week's recorded?
It is, and it's on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
So you can search Wood County Committee on Aging or WCCOA. Either one will work in YouTube, and you'll find our page. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is my first time in the series, but man, it's incredible.
Yes, it is great.
But anyway, so I don't know if I'm on this thing.
What is your name?
Joel Burrow, URG.
You are on here. Yep. So you committee person. Okay, have you filled one of these out before? You've been to the senior center?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, if you want to fill one out, and you can bring it back to me next time, it's fine, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice to meet you, Joel. For you, I must. Okay. All right. Do you need a card? Yes, I can, or I can make it for you right now. Okay, yeah. I brought some down with me just for this very perfect. Oh, it does not. No, I don't have a permanent marker with me. But, yes, there's a scanner next to the computer that scans the barcode. And then on the screen, it's got everything that's going on for the day. So today, it would have just been great to see. But if you came into the senior center, there's lunch, it's any other activities that happen. And you just select what you're here for. You're welcome.
Janice Storagazzi, and do I owe you any money or do I think?
No, it looks like no.
Okay,
You had bought a book,
right,
and it looks like you were taken care of.
okay,
So,
okay, good.
yeah.
I just, John remembered that he thought when I came back, I said I still owe something.
And I remember there was a note in here for someone that they still owed some money, but that was taken out. So I think,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. Hello. I've never filled out a form or done any of that. Yes, so I can send one if you plan to come back next week. Yeah. Okay, if you want to fill it out and bring it back next week, that would work. Anything else I'm not. You're fine. So typically, do you plan to possibly come into the senior center for other things as well? Programming. Okay, yeah. So, when you come back, we have a card that we make. Once we've got this form on file, we can make you a card. It's got a barcode on the back. And basically, we have a computer at the front desk with a scanner. You scan this when you come in. And on the screen, everything that's happening for the day pops up. Programs, meals. Today, it would just say great decisions, but during the week, there's lots of things. There's even a second screen. You select all the things you're here for and click finish. It's just a way for us to track who's coming in, what they're here for, and things like that. So once we have that on file, we can make you a card if you plan to come back in, and give you one, so that you can do that.
And you had said to me on the phone that we
that you could watch these on YouTube.
Yes.
So I went to YouTube because I thought, I want some products, right? And then I went,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
on age.
Yes.
I could not find any of the limits. Okay. What I could find.
This
So-
also needs to go to Danielle
Okay.
along with the CD.
Yeah, all right, I will give it back to her.
So thank you so much for your
Yes.
help, and
You're welcome.
I hope you also enjoyed it.
Yes, I did. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
being here. We appreciate
Happy to be here.
it.
Thank you. It was wonderful. Okay, so you go to, did you go to YouTube?
I went to YouTube. Yep. Oops, what is that? Okay, I don't want that. So when I search, I always search WCCOA just because it's quicker, but
Yeah, when you go on.
right. So this one with the blue symbol is our page. Okay. So if you actually click on that, that will take you to our whole page. And then you're able to go to videos instead of home.
Okay.
And it gives you the library of everything we've got posted.
Okay.
And it might take a minute. You saw it was kind of swirling
Yeah,
for
yeah,
old things to pop up. Through the pandemic, we posted lots of Zooms. So you might have to, go back a little bit before you start finding them. But it would have been,
Yeah, there wasn't-
February.
I-
So actually, here's Arpan last year. He did Brexit in the European Union. He did 2 last year. Lecture 4 is here, so they're kind of mixed in. There's Arpan again. Right there. So,
Yeah, okay.
yep. Does that
So
help?
when you go to YouTube, you put WCCOA.
Yep.
And then when you get there, you look for the blue symbol.
Right.
And once you open that.
Right.
Then you go to video.
Right. And actually, so these are, you'll see, these are our videos coming up in a search, but like this isn't us. This isn't us. That's not us. This is our page. But then sometimes you'll actually find
I
like,
think I clicked on that.
yeah,
That's what
which this should take you to our page, and you can even subscribe if you wanted to. But yeah, this will take you here.
Okay, okay.
And the homepage usually it only shows you like some videos, so it's easier if you click on this videos button.
Okay.
I think if you kept doing this, it would take you there eventually, but it's easier to
Okay, yeah.
actually,
That's good.
So we'll bring up the whole library.
All right, I'll bring this back.
Perfect, sounds good. Nice to meet you in person.
Work is good.
Did either of you have, oh, they love us.